Administration at all troubled or embarrassed that Iran is using these images and video and these soldiers with blindfolds, sailors with blindfolds on or on their knees with their hands behind their back for propaganda purposes?
Doug, primarily what we were concerned about when it came to our soldiers is making sure that they were released promptly and unharmed. And all of that happened within 14 hours of their originally being taken into Iranian custody when they drifted into Iranian territorial waters.
But were you troubled or embarrassed by Iran using these photos?
Well, I don't think there's any reason for anybody to be embarrassed. I think there's a reason for us to be certainly relieved that our servicemen and women who are protecting America in a very dangerous part of the world were released pretty shortly after they were taken into custody.
Can you tell us what the rules of engagement that these sailors and these boats were operating under in the Persian Gulf?
The Department of Defense could give you a better sense of the kind of instructions that they were given before their mission began. What the Secretary of Defense has said is that they erroneously ended up in Iranian territorial waters. The circumstances that led them to this particular situation are still being investigated by the Department of Defense, who's conducting interviews with the soldiers who were involved. So there's more that we'll learn about this particular situation.
It seems there's a lot of cryptic blocking of information coming out. It's been well over 24 hours now. We have instant communication. These soldiers have been interrogated by their superiors. Presumably, either the Pentagon or the White House would know precisely what went on. Yet there are so many gaps. In fact, we had a senior Pentagon official tell us yesterday that the administration is blocking the facts from getting out.
That's not true. I think we've been pretty transparent about this, and I think we've been transparent about the fact that if we had followed the advice of some of the Republican critics of the administration, we'd probably be in a bloody war with Iran right now over our sailors. The fact is, our sailors right now are out of harm's way. Their boats were released, and there was no loss of life. It's unclear to me, by the way, exactly how the safety and security of the United States or our men and women in uniform is advanced by starting a war with a nation like Iran that has an advanced military.
These sailors are part of the Fifth Fleet. If their instructions are to do nothing, and from all appearances, they were apprehended by much smaller boats, much less armed boats, and we understand that we're not in a state of war with Iran, which again raises questions about Iran's behavior, blindfolding these guys and holding them at gunpoint. But they're members of the Fifth Fleet. Is the Fifth Fleet under instructions to do nothing in the event of something like this happening?
Well, again, you'd have to check with the Fifth Fleet. I feel pretty confident in telling you they didn't just do nothing. But you can go ask them exactly what their response was. Whatever it was consistent with the president's strategy that led to the prompt and safe return of those sailors about 14 hours after they were originally taken into custody. Okay. JC?
Although I'm sure everyone is pleased, especially the sailors and their families, that they are returned safely, and diplomacy did rule the day, in a sense.
I think the only people who are unhappy about it are Republicans.
Well, that's...
For some reason.
That's their problem, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it is.
The fact is that this could be very well seen as a violation of the Geneva Convention, where they were traipsed out in front of cameras, which is totally a violation, as prisoners, in a sense, under their jurisdiction. Has anyone given that any thought, and will there be a particular protest to that? Or are you pleased that it's over and you're moving on?
Well, JC, we certainly are pleased that it's over. We are pleased that our sailors were released unharmed and promptly, 14 hours after being taken into custody and without shots being fired to secure their release. When it comes to the Geneva Convention, my understanding is that it primarily applies to prisoners of war. And obviously, as Doug noted, we're not at war with Iran. So based on what I've been told, the Geneva Convention doesn't apply in this particular circumstance. But again, what we were focused on from the very beginning, from the from the earliest reports about this incident, was the safe and prompt return of our sailors, and that's exactly what we secured. And we did that without delaying the start of the State of the Union, and without launching any sort of military action against the nation of Iran.
But you could understand how the visual effect that is a serious one. There were guns. They were blindfolded. As Jim said, it was a
I've seen
contentious war or not war. It depends on your definition of what that kind of entrapment meant.
Well, no, from that standpoint, JC, we're not at war with Iran. I'm also not denying that this is a dangerous situation. Clearly it is. Again, that's a reason for us to be appreciative of the sacrifices and risks that our men and women in the military take to keep us safe and to keep us free and to advance our national security interests, even in one of the most volatile regions of the world. I also think it underscores the value of responsible, mature presidential leadership. The president didn't start a war over this. The president pursued diplomatic engagement through his Secretary of State, who had an open diplomatic channel of communication with his Iranian counterpart. And because of that important diplomatic work, our sailors were released unharmed 14 hours after being taken into custody in their own boats. That's again, as I said earlier, I think Republicans would be quite hard-pressed to make the case that a better outcome was possible here. Okay. Greg.
A year ago yesterday, Warren Weinstein was killed in a drone strike in the border region of Pakistan. Both